countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, it is now time for the last comic shop podcast.
That is right. We are opening up the shop to newbies to help them find their way underneath this giant comic book tent.
That's right. And we're leaving the lights on for the oldies and the moldies that are going to appreciate this version of a Supergirl story that's a lot tougher than I think your standard Supergirl fare might be.
Honestly, is it? I have a hard time figuring out who Supergirl is as a character. Hopefully today's show will help me better crystallize an idea of who Supergirl is, because we've got a back-to-back Supergirl review here on The Last Comic Shop. I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson. I'm joined by Jay Scott and Chad Smith for another movie/comic book show. It's not really movie mayhem because it's no longer May, but whatever. There was a movie that came out in the theaters, the Supergirl movie, and so we are going to be reviewing that later on in the program. But since we are a comic book podcast, you are going to get a comic book review before that. And what better comic book to review at the same time as the Supergirl movie as basically what is in essence the source material? Because if you've seen even the trailers for the Supergirl movie, and then you read Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, a lot of similarities between these two things. Some differences as well, but we'll get to that later on. So yes, we are reading Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow to start off our show, and J.A. is going to give us the folks involved. One name should be very familiar to folks that listen to The Last Comic Shop, because I think we've covered more of his books than any other creator on the face of the planet.
That is right. So Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow is a maxi series from DC, written by Tom King, with incredible art by Bilquis and colors by Matias Lopez, with lettering by Clayton Cowles.
Yeah.
And has been collected into trade now, so you can get it in trade. You can still get it in the original floppies if you want. Absolutely.
In fact, what's been selling gangbusters recently is they've got the compact, those DC compact collections. You can get a Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. I saw that actually in the airport. Oh, shoot. It's at Hudson News, so you know it's good. But let's get the 10-cent synopsis from Chad Smith. Is it good?
I've been champing at the bit since 2021 when this is released for us to read this on the show. But the 10-cent synopsis, have you ever seen the movie True Grit? Yeah, it's that. If you haven't, the basic premise is there is a young girl whose father is murdered, and she wants to go on a quest for revenge, and she tries to hire Supergirl, and she refuses, but then it turns out that the guy attacks Crypto, and so Crypto is wounded, and now Supergirl needs information from this guy in order to be able to heal Crypto, and so they set off on an 8-issue journey to catch and destroy Krem from the Yellow Hills.
Even his name sounds like some True Grit villain.
So I thought it sounded like some sort of bad toothpaste. Like, did you get the creme for all your teeth whitening needs?
Nobody's using yellow toothpaste.
No, but Krem does sound like an off-brand toothpaste that you would get at Kmart.
Instead of Crest, Krem.
We can't afford the Crest. We're too po. Anyways, first off, let me get this out of the way. I really did enjoy this. Like a lot of other Tom King stuff, this was candy, and I read through it in about an hour. I couldn't put it down. It was, if you've never read Tom King, you should. If you have read Tom King, I don't know, he just has a way with words, and his stories are really good. But I will say this. My biggest problem with this book, it's with the character of, I guess, Supergirl, which is what I kind of led off this show with. Oftentimes, Tom King will come onto a book and he'll do his own Tom King thing. He'll take the character in a completely different direction and he'll do whatever he needs to do. And sometimes this works, especially with IPs that you really don't care about, like that are very non-fleshed out, like Mr. Miracle prior to that series, or Adam Strange or whatever. Like, but you would think that Supergirl would be fleshed out enough that you would care if he did something that was different in this book than in other Supergirl books. And for me, the fact that I still didn't care about Supergirl and other books and just dread this as a Supergirl book, it kind of bothered me. I think of like Supergirl up there with characters like Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman. They're well known. And the fact that you really don't know who Supergirl is, or if you do, she's like written a whole 1,000 different ways in other stories up until this. I found myself saying to myself, this could have easily been a Wonder Woman story, but it was in space. So maybe he needed a space person. But at times it just seemed like Tom King was writing Wonder Woman stuff. It was great, but it just bothered me that like Supergirl is so like nondescript, I guess. Doesn't have any peaks or valleys or any, just flat plains. And you're just like, oh, whatever you want to do with it.
I think your complaint, and it's not that it's invalid, it's that you don't know who Supergirl is. She's a character who's been around. She's been rebooted a couple of times. There was, in the 80s, she was that amorphous blob for a little bit, post-Crisis, when her biggest highlight was being killed in Crisis after the Helen Slater movie never took off. But Supergirl's never been far behind in terms of representation. Like, she's had movies, she's headlined TV shows. She's always kind of there in the background. Because of that popularity, it is similar to Wonder Woman. We have the same complaints about Wonder Woman, prior to things like Dead Earth, and like, we've discovered more Wonder Woman stories along the way, but Wonder Woman had always seemed more like a pop culture character than a comic book character. There's different Wonder Womans to fit whatever story you want to have, and like, but that's the beauty of DC Comics, is their characters oftentimes, because of their godly nature and they're super powered, like they can do so many different things. They are the water to the Bruce Lee's water jug. They become what you want them to be. I think your issue is less with the character and more so like DC's never had a definitive version. Even the current Supergirl comic by Sophie Campbell, which is awesome, by the way. I recommended it on a previous show. Like, it's all teenage drama and hijinks and stuff like that. Like, it's soap opera fun, but even that is a different take than this. But it works because Supergirl can, for a long time, she just literally did this. She can morph to fill whatever void you need.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the highlight of Supergirl's entire existence was that she died and appeared on a great cover during Crisis.
It's a really good cover.
It is. And then my next inkling of Supergirl is that she was one of those CW shows.
Yeah.
I didn't watch any of.
But I always wanted to.
She had a rabid following. Those shows had a rabid following. I just wasn't one of them. I just knew that she was Superman's cousin.
And that's all you need. And then, honestly, like, this book, as much grief as we give Tom King for taking characters and manipulating them to fit whatever story he has.
Which he did here,
yeah,
totally.
You could definitely accuse Tom King of that and have a very good case. He still manages to pull out the things that make Supergirl Supergirl. This girl who's been through such trauma but comes out the other side with, that kindness and that empathy, and that sounds like Supergirl. That checks out, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure. It also checks out for characters like She-Ra. I mean, we just talked about that He-Man show a couple weeks back. Again, like, it just bothered me. It seemed the character was a little too generic. It was a great character. The Supergirl character in this is really, really great, but it
could have been another character. It didn't
it could have been anybody.
Have to be. You're right. It was very water for the vessel as opposed to the vessel.
Right. Yeah, but now we got a Supergirl movie with Lobo. That's true. The world we live in.
That's true. And if that's the good thing that comes out of this, so be it. But I felt bad that we read this book after we had read Helen of Windhorn a little bit, because I will kind of say that I enjoyed Helen of Windhorn more than this, but that's only because Again, Supergirl was.
I do think as beautiful as Bilquis Evely's art is, she does suffer a bit of John Byrne face, where a lot of her characters look very similar. Her Supergirl looks exactly like her Helen of Windhorn. The face is exactly the same.
And Ruthie, where like if you just change the eyes, they have similar eyes.
Yeah.
But I'm going to stand up for Bilquis Evely here because Supergirl was my first exposure to Bilquis Evely's art years before I came across Helen of Windhorn, which I also love. The combination of the art and the colors are just so beautiful. And it's not just the faces. You can make the argument the faces are similar, but the backgrounds, the detail that goes into the worldscapes that Bilquis Evely is building here, the creatures. And like I said, in combination with the colors, there's just something about this book that is so magical. There's something about her art that is so magical. It takes me to a place where it's like, I feel like I'm on these worlds. It's so visceral. Like when the monsters come into play or there's dinosaurs or whatever, like I'm struggling to put into words. Like I love it so much.
Well, I do like the fact that in this book, unlike the Helen of Windhorn, there are some more sci-fi aspects of it. I love the look of the brigands, these people that eventually hook up with Krem and are like, hey, you're a heartless bastard. You should hang out with us. And he's like, sure thing. Let's go destroy a lot of planets and raise hell. And some of the stories that come out of those, the brigands, are some of the best stories, even though they're like tertiary characters. They're more of like the catalyst to start the story. My favorite issue, to be honest, is the one about the blue and the purple people. That hit me right between the eyes. And there's some great Bilquis Evely art in that. There's a great scene where somebody shoots Supergirl point blank in the face with a revolver, and she just kind of flicks the bullet out of the corner of her eyeball as she just stares us down in like a 4-panel shot. Tremendous stuff in that particular issue, as well as the one where Supergirl loses her powers on the magic green planet.
The one where Clark made it 45 minutes. And that's Superman isn't in this book, but he's always that tertiary character where like people are mad at Clark, and so they'll pick fights with Supergirl, and she's like, he can be kind of a dick sometimes. But that was great though, the storyline where like she's on this planet and she's like, oh, I've heard the stories about this before, where like this happened, and it's going to be tough to make it. And Ruthie's like, well, how long did Superman survive? Before he got rescued from the Justice League. It's like about 45 minutes. How long do we have to be here? Like about 10 hours. And like, it just shows how much more badass Supergirl is, how much more she has endured, how much more she can endure. I think back, I don't know if you guys ever watched the show The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. She was a girl who was kidnapped and kept underground by a cult leader. But there's a scene in there where she talks about how she can endure anything for 10 seconds. And so that's how she lived her life, was 10 seconds at a time. Like, I can do this. And then a new 10 seconds would start. And to me, that was Supergirl. I can handle this for 10 seconds. And then she would endure it. And then another 10 seconds would start. And she was so battle-hardened. She was ready for that next 10 seconds. Never gives up. Whereas Superman's out of there in 45 minutes. She could have been there for days.
Yes, it was one of the better issues. Unfortunately, it was followed immediately by one of the weaker issues, and not because of the story of how Supergirl survives the collapse of Krypton. That was the cool part of the story. The dumb part of the story was Comet, the super horse. I still don't understand Comet. I don't.
Oh, he's a dude.
How he's just there. Like, stupidest idea ever. And you're supposed to feel for this horse or like be excited about. I was just like, that was a bridge too far for me. I get Crypto. I'm on board with Crypto as the super puppy. Like, but one super pet is enough.
So you don't
the horse
think
is not a pet. The horse is his own dude. There's pathos in that.
He makes the ultimate sacrifice for Supergirl. That's what. Hopefully, this is out of continuity, and we see Comet again.
Yes.
You can't see the video. Both of them were laughing the moment I talked about Comet, the super horse. They're trying.
We just
we're
like
all
what we like what the horse does to you.
The last thing before we get to ratings real quick is, for years, Chad wanted to read this book on this show. And for years, I had not read it because I was like, well, we're going to read it on the show eventually, so I'm just going to save it. But for years, he also said that the ending was just not good. And I am curious about what about the ending wasn't good, because I thought it was a perfectly fine ending. What did you not like about the ending, at least the initial time? Maybe you've come around on it.
Okay, so here's the deal. When I first read this story, probably about 4 issues in before I started, right? So I had heard good things, but it's a Supergirl book. Who reads Supergirl books? It took me a while, and I was lucky enough to stumble across a shop that still had the first issue, and I was like, all right, we'll start from there. So I got it. I read the first 4 issues. I loved it. Issues 5 and 6 came out soon after. It was great. And then the wait for issues 7 and 8 just took longer and longer and longer. And I just wanted Krem. I wanted to see his comeuppance, right? I wanted to see how Ruthie was going to deal with it. I wanted to see the consequences of all of it. I was ready. And I was waiting and waiting and waiting. Keep in mind, this is my first exposure to Bilquis Everly art. Like, this story, like, it's all a revelation to me. And then I get to the ending, and basically, they send him to the Phantom Zone, and he serves hundreds of years in the Phantom Zone, and then comes out, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and
she kills him.
She does kill him at the end. She hits him over the head with her stick. So she still gets to do it. It just seems so cheap after all the brutality of it. And like, this guy was a total bastard. It wasn't what I felt like I had waited for in the process. Now, this time around, I will say, we had all 8 issues available to read. I thought reading it in one sitting or 1 or 2 sittings, it did read much better. It didn't feel like I waited for this. So I enjoyed the ending much more the second time around. All the more reason to encourage rereading.
Well, I'm looking at it again. Did she kill him, or did she just bonk him on the head? Because the writing in yellow, what's that referring to? Where Supergirl's talking about the sword and the blood and stabbing through the chest, but the art, she looks like she just conked him on the head, but there's blood coming out. I don't know. The art is ambiguous.
She gives him a big whack, but he still has his hands up.
But then he looks like he's dead because he doesn't get up in that last panel. I assumed she killed him because in the writing, it's all about stabbing through the chest.
My reading was, I don't think she did. She held this grudge for this long of a time.
That's why I thought she killed him. That's why I remember reading it the first time and laughing, because I was like, all of this about, building in yourself and forgiveness and learning, and then she just kills him anyways. Fuck him.
Well, it's one of those things, I guess, we'll put on the list of things to ask Tom King if we ever interview him on the show. Right after, why do the eyes change color in Mr. Miracle so many times? Any case, we got to get to ratings because we still got a movie review and recommendations to do. So, rating scale for Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, comes from J.A. Scott. What do we got this week?
There are a lot of swords in this book. More swords than I was ready for. So, we're going to go swords.
Well, I'm going to start. I can't give this a full 4 because of the comments that I made. I came out of this still not caring about Supergirl as a character, even though this was a really good story. It didn't make me want to go and read more Supergirl stories like it did with maybe Mr. Miracle or whatever. But it's still Tom King and it's still Bilquis Everly. One's a really great artist. One's a really good writer. And it was a real page turner. And if nothing else, I would give it a 3.75 for that issue about the blue and purple people. That was Tom King at his best, giving a social commentary. Yeah, Supergirl, you get them. You get them good for what they did. That was justice or whatever it happens to be. 3.75. I enjoyed it. You should read it. You won't care about Supergirl afterwards, though. Could have been a Wonder Woman story. Could have been a She-Ra story.
I will respectfully disagree. I think this is wonderful. I had not seen Supergirl in this light prior to this story. It starts off with Supergirl, and since if you saw the James Gunn movie last year, you saw the the movie that we're going to be talking about here in a minute or two. You know, the Milly Alcock Supergirl. She's not a straight arrow sort of character, but I hadn't experienced that Supergirl before this. So when the story opens with Supergirl on a planet with a red sun so she can get drunk on her 21st birthday, that was hilarious to me. And it was a different side of Supergirl. This is the first time I guess I had considered how, unlike Superman, who leaves his planet as a baby, Supergirl grew up on her planet. She was a teenager when she left. She had to experience all that trauma. And having all of that power, yet all of that trauma together at the same time, what that would do. And to have a character like Supergirl comes out on the other side of it. I loved it. It was a whole different way to see Supergirl. And then the art, what is it with the flame creature she becomes at one point? There's space dragons. There are times where like she's embodying different space elements were unlike things I had experienced before. And so add that to the fact this was my first Bilquis Everly book. Like, no, this is a 4. It's always going to be a 4. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, I can't give it a 4, but I don't think it's far off. I'm giving it a 3.5. I think everything we've said about Supergirl is she is, and maybe this just because it's a Tom King book, but she is a bit amorphous, fit in however you want her to fit into your story. I do like the idea that unlike Superman, they're the last Kryptonians, but she knows what that means. Superman never knew what it was to be a Kryptonian. He just knows Earth, and he's super powerful. He's a Superman. But she knew Krypton, and she knows what it means, and so I think she carries the weight of her lost society on her shoulders. And that's a crushing weight. And it goes to what, Chad, you were saying about, you know, surviving on that planet for 10 hours and being able to having this thick skin, this, because she's been carrying all of this weight around with her all her life. I like that part of it. I felt that some of Bilquis Everly's faces start to look the same a bit, but there's also incredible full-page panels and incredible spreads, and it's just beautifully drawn. And I do love anytime we get to see mass transit in space. I like when they have to take the space bus to go somewhere. It's just, I'm a fan of mass transit, and space mass transit is like the best. Mwah.
Yeah.
It's world building. And I will look past the fact that some of the creature design was kind of royally cribbed from Star Wars.
Oh, like that poster. Oh, yikes.
Hey, you know what? This is crazy that we're reading this book the year that we did Lone Wolf and Cub, too. Because, again, it's more Lone Wolf and Cub jazz, like it really is. Like it's all about super powerful person, this other guy walking across this dangerous place, trying to get to someplace else. I don't know. It's nice how everything seems to work together here on the show.
Did you say Lobo and Cup?
No!
It's Jason Momoa in this book. When does he come in?
Jason Momoa?
Yeah.
Lone Wolf and Cub. Maybe that will be a recommendation. We've got that coming up right after this commercial break. Stay tuned for more Last Comic Shop as we get to the movie review in just a quick second.
Hey, it's Mikey Wood, frequent Last Comic Shop guest and collector. And as a collector, I'm always in need of boards, bags, long boxes, and more to house all those comics. That's why I use promo code LCSPOD to get 10% off my orders at BCWSupplies.com. Not only does it get me a discount on BCW's already low prices, but I know using LCSPOD at checkout is another way I can show my support to the Last Comic Shop podcast in their continuing mission to bring fans together under that big comic book tent. So if you're in need of comic book supplies, head out to BCWSupplies.com and use promo code LCSPOD today. That's LCSPOD.
Have you ever been reading through a stack of comics and thought, maybe I should see what that Arkham Asylum game is all about? Or been playing Marvel vs. Capcom and felt like you were at a real disadvantage since you didn't know who half the characters were? Well, Play Comics is the show for you. I'm Chris, and each episode we take a look at video games based on comic properties and how well they stick to that source material. So whether you know the comics and want to know how all those games work, or you know the games and want to find out where all this craziness came from, go check out Play Comics at playcomics.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
All right, we're back with more Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for recommendations. Yes, that time of every single show where, again, we make you wait for a movie review because we're a comic book podcast, and we want to make sure that you're getting out to local comic book shops and picking up not only Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, in a wide variety of formats, including that awesome compact DC collection version, which, again, is nice and travel size and cheap as all get out, and you can take to the beach or the pool or whatever and enjoy that read. But here's some other stuff that you might like. We're going to start off with J.A. Scott. Jay, what do you got?
I'm going to recommend a little section of Superman that often gets overlooked, I think, and is underrated. And that is the space of the Superman story arc between when he's killed by Doomsday and when he returns, and like there are four of them and all this. I am talking about the trade paperback World Without Superman, which is just interesting because it was all these writers having to write Superman books with no Superman in it. And you actually get to see the impact of Superman on the world when he's not there. And I like that concept. One could say they were spinning their wheels a bit while they were setting up all these different Supermen to come back and you know, getting over the trauma of the death of Superman. But it acts as a nice little pause where you get to explore Metropolis and explore the world that Superman created but is no longer in.
Well, that dovetails really nicely with my recommendation this week, which is a classic issue of Superman from the 1960s. And I recently found out in this particular issue that Superman dies. It's an Elseworlds. They call it an imaginary tale at the beginning of the story. They're like, what if this happened? But in essence, that's what Elseworlds are. That's what ifs are. But this is a story. It's from November of 1961. It is Superman Volume 1, Issue 149, written by Jerry Siegel with pencils by Kurt Swan. So that's a classic Superman team. And really, it's the story about Lex Luthor trying to change his ways. He finds a cure for cancer. He's doing all kinds of awesome stuff. Superman lets him out of prison, gives him a watch so he can become Superman's pal, Lex Luthor, gives him, like, I don't know, a laboratory and all this other jazz. And this goes on for about 20 pages where Lex is just doing all this super nice stuff, pushing away gangsters and mob bosses and saying he's not going to work for them anymore. He's not going to try to kill Superman. And then he says, Superman, why don't you come up to my base above the moon just for a hot second? I got something to show you. Turns out, like, this whole time, he's just been building some sort of massive kryptonite ray that's going to, like, kill Superman. And does. Not only that, but he brings up Perry White and Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane and puts them in another room and is like, oh, I'm going to kill Superman and let all you watch. And Superman actually does die. At which point, Supergirl takes over for Superman and actually brings Lex Luthor to justice. So, yeah, it was kind of neat to see Supergirl actually do something, too, in this particular book. And she becomes the new Superman of the planet Earth. And they're like, yeah, Superman's dead. Wouldn't that be a great what if? Ha ha. We'll be back next month. So, does it count? I don't know. But I got to think there's an infinite Earth where this actually did happen. So Superman 149, check it out. It's a really, really interesting read from Silver Age Superman. Chad.
Okay, so initially my plan was just to recommend more of the Sophie Campbell Supergirl because it's such a fun series. And it harkens back to one of my personal favorites, which I know the guys weren't a big fan of, which was Squirrel Girl by Ryan North and Erica Henderson. But then Andy's like, you already recommended Sophie Campbell's Supergirl. I'm like, yeah, but it's still real good. But then I was like, all right, fine. I'll recommend something new. And then so I already had Squirrel Girl in my head. And like, what's new? What do I want to recommend? And then wouldn't you know, Squirrel Girl's writer, Ryan North, just released a book called Doom Quest. It's the start of a 12-issue maxi series. I got the cover that was the collage of all the Dooms, which is super awesome. But Marvel also released blind bags with little Doom masks. So they're obviously having fun with this series. And the best part about the series is it's a Doctor Doom time travel story, but it's not just a Doctor Doom time travel story. It's a Doctor Doom quantum leap story where he is quantum leaping into different periods of time and having to figure his way out of these pickles. The first issue, which I've read, it should still be on the shelves at your local comic shop, was a blast. It was bonkers. It had all the heart that Ryan North brought to Squirrel Girl, which is similar to all the heart that Sophie Campbell's bringing to the Supergirl regular series for me. So check out Doom Quest at your local comic shop today.
Well, we hope that you have fun with our movie review. It is coming up right after this commercial break, so stay tuned for more Last Comic Shop and Supergirl right after this.
We're all familiar with the Golden Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age, and Modern Age of comics, but we can't still be in the Modern Age after almost 4 decades, can we?
We don't think so. And that's why we started the Iron Age of Comics, a critical re-evaluation of comic books from about 1985 to 2000.
On this podcast, we go beyond the chromium covers and the grim and gritty cliches, and take a deep dive into one of the most vibrant but divisive periods in comics history.
That's the Iron Age of Comics, with new episodes every first and third Wednesdays of the month. And look for us on social media, where the handle is @Iron Age of Comics.
This message is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Veterans, do you want military history and your stories of service preserved? The Library of Congress Veterans History Project collects, preserves, and makes accessible the first-hand accounts of veterans who served from World War I through today. Make your story heard. To learn more and become involved, visit loc.gov/vets.
And we're ready, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. Hopefully, you've had your fill of movie popcorn. Those folks that went out to see Supergirl, which apparently is a very select group, that has not burned up the box office as much as they had hoped. But we are here for your Supergirl 2026 movie review. So, Mr. J.A., let's start things off with the who is involved with this particular film.
All right, well, Supergirl 2026 was directed by Craig Gillespie on a script by first-time movie scriptwriter Anna Nigera of child acting fame.
What was she on as a childhood star?
She's known for playing Sarah in Sarah Plus D and Penny Arias in The Vampire Diaries.
Neither show I've ever watched.
Yeah, not on my particular radar, but that's cool.
It was produced by Peter Safran and James Gunn and starred Milly Alcock as Supergirl, Matthias Schoenaerts as Krem of the Yellow Hills, Eve Ridley as Ruthie, David Krumholtz as Zor-El, Emily Beecham as Alora Inzi, or however you pronounce her name, Supergirl's mom. David Cordsweat reprising his role as Kal-El/Clark Kent/Superman, and Jason Momoa as a completely superfluous Lobo who just shows up because they needed to get Lobo and maybe bring people to the theater. I don't know. He's there. He doesn't really affect any of the storyline, but he does show up from time to time, and he's perfectly played by Jason Momoa. I wonder if Jason even knew that he was being recorded. Maybe he just showed up and they're just filming. He's just Jason Momoa being Jason Momoa.
I imagine he just showed up with the makeup on. And he was like, "I'm Lobo. Get me in."
That's what I was going to say. Like, he didn't just show up. I mean, gosh knows that they did a really good job at least making him look like Lobo. Like, that was a pretty comic book accurate Lobo. Lots of pancake there, lots of makeup, lots of zhuzhin for the mimosas. Double shot of orange juice. So
there you go. All right. But Andy, in addition to our mimosas, why don't you kick us off with our 10-cent synopsis?
Here you go, kids. Here's the 10-cent synopsis for Supergirl 2026. Do you remember when we did this review of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow? It happened about a half hour ago, and we talked about this book. Yeah, that's what happens in this movie. I mean, there are some slight variations on
There's
the
a
theme.
Lobo.
There is a Lobo. You are absolutely right. They replaced Comet the Super Horse with Lobo.
There's
traded
human
the horse.
trafficking. Well, alien trafficking.
Yeah, but like you knew that the brigands in the other book, like, yes, there is more of an emphasis on the human trafficking, the slavery.
Yeah, that's real bad. And Cram had all those piercings. He's much more handsome in the comic.
Oh, he is much more handsome, roguishly handsome in the comic compared to the.
And I think also in the movie, Supergirl loses her powers like every reel, right? You can't go a third of the way through the movie without her either gaining her powers back or losing her powers. She does it so many times. It became ad nauseum. I guess this is what they have to do when they have these superpowered characters that are just so strong. They've got to figure out a way to bork them for a bit, but she gets borked all the time.
I will say this, in Tom King's book, they didn't have to bork Supergirl very much because he was able to tell stories that involve Supergirl and her vast power, without having to depower her. Again, where was the blue and purple people issue? That was my favorite part of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, was that particular issue where she goes to this planet and the brigands were there, blue people that survived, and they got them to sell out all the purple people. And like she was like all pissed off. That was great. Not so much in this movie. I know that there's been a lot of folks out there that have been pretty much lambasting this movie, slamming it unnecessarily. But one thing that I want to say, and I've been saying it ever since I saw it, is boy howdy, was this movie grimy.
Not just grimy, it was dark. I don't mean dark as in like dark and evil. It was just dark as in like not enough light. Just because with modern technology you can shoot like you're Kubrick filming Barry Lyndon doesn't mean you should, because you're not Stanley Kubrick. No one is. So stop trying to pretend like you are and make your movie all shadowy and dark and everything. It was just hard to see. It's the same. They reminded me of Solo, a Star Wars story, which was also horrendously dark. Even they're outside in like bright Hoth-like environment and it's dark.
Yeah, I will say that's a critique too, comparing the comic to the movie. One of the things about the comic was there was always that underlying beauty. Whether it was the Bilquis, which is that how you're supposed to say the name?
No, I looked it up. I found an interview she did in Brazil, in Portuguese, and they call her Bilquis.
Okay, so it's not Bilquis like Balki.
No.
Which I was having fun in my head with that. Oh, we're on planet Balki. Oh, look out for cousin Larry Appleton. But anyway, the book with the Bilquis Everly artwork, which was so beautiful, and so much of the story was about how strong Kara was, even though she had gone through all this trauma. Like it highlighted the beauty of those things about her kindness and that sort of thing. And this movie really went the other way to show how rough around the edges things were. And it played from that perspective. I really enjoyed the line that Ruthie had where she's like, you're not always nice, but you're kind. And you're not always perfect, but you're good. I like that element of it, but I think they may have steered too far into the grit of the true grit. You didn't have those moments of beauty or those moments of wonder or inspiration like you would get from Superman. This was a much dirtier, around the edges version.
I didn't understand some of the choices they made. In the book, she's 21. She's celebrating her 21st birthday. In the movie, they made her 23. Why? Why give her 2 more years? It makes no sense. 21 makes a lot more sense, because people go through it, especially if you're in the U.S., people go through a change when they're 21. It's sort of a coming of age thing. It would relate better to that. Making her 23 just made her look like a loser. Maybe that's what they wanted to do. I don't know.
She kind of was.
Yeah.
She wasn't kind of a loser. She just was a loser at this point.
I think the book really leaned into sort of how she had to process the fact that she lost her entire planet. I love that Krypton didn't die in a day thing.
Right. Well, a couple things here. I mean, back to the griminess, I will say that Krem was so much more roguishly handsome in the comic book, to the point where you're like, ooh, get that guy, because he's kind of cool. I guess I could have a beer with him. He seems all right. I mean, he's shooting people with arrows, but whatever. In the movie, no, my God, they made him look like, I don't know. something out of Mad Max, which, again, they were going for that aesthetic. They made all the brigands basically like space Mad Max people. And I'm just like, that's cool, but it's also an aesthetic I've seen like 1,000 times. I thought the brigands in the book looked a lot more interesting and different. And for a movie that initially, is coming out of this James Gunn verse, it was kind of like somebody was trying to do James Gunn, but not exactly there. Like there's that one scene where she walks into the convenience store on a different planet, eats like the alien poop. And she's like, oh, this stuff tastes like poop. And you're getting it that like, oh yeah, that would be in a James Gunn film and that would be ironic and funny. But then this movie, it just seemed gross. Ew, like what are we doing here? And like she goes on the bus and there's the two bus driver characters. And I could see in a James Gunn, those characters would work and there would be a little bit more back and forth and it would maybe be fun. This just seemed off-putting. There were just some stylistic choices. And J.A.'s point about her being like kind of a loser, that kind of really bothered me. I get it that this movie was about Supergirl's arc and her coming to terms with the death of her family and the loss of her planet and basically growing up. But there was something inherently hopeful in the Tom King Woman of Tomorrow, in which you kind of sort of knew that Supergirl was always like in the background doing the noble thing. And maybe it was more obvious in the book that she was doing the noble thing, or maybe they gave her more chances to shine doing the noble thing. Here, it just like seems like she did a noble thing and she was like, I'm also a jerk. And it was off-putting. And not until the end did it make her feel heroic.
Yeah, and we will bag on Tom King a little bit because he likes to just take characters and instead of fitting the character, he fits the character into his story. But I felt like the movie version of this, I don't know if they understood the characters, which was strange to me because Tom King was involved. But it did feel like there was something that was missing. And in the book, whenever Supergirl's depowered, we brought this up earlier, it means something. We have that story about how Clark lasted 40 minutes before he got rescued, and she's just there and she just endures because this is someone who's been through all these different traumatic experiences, and deep down she's tougher. Here, it was just, it didn't have the impact, because they didn't explain it. And I saw this with my 15-year-old, and I came out, I was like, what'd you think? He's like, well, everybody was sad. It was like, it was tough because there's nobody to balance. Like when everybody's sad. But he also mentioned how Supergirl was always overpowered. Even when she was depowered, she was still overpowered. She was never in danger at all. She's getting shot with kryptonite arrows, and it means absolutely nothing. They had all the pieces there, but they just didn't understand how to make them into a story that was going to resonate.
Yeah, for as amazing a job as Milly Alcock did, I thought the script let her down, the plot let her down. At times, it just felt like generic space stuff. It very much was waiting for Taserface to show up at some point, because it had that same aesthetic, but it was just like B grade. And
it's Dollar General James Gunn.
Yeah.
Right. I'm glad somebody said it. I was watching it. It just felt like dollar store James Gunn. And I was just like, this is not what I expect, especially as a follow-up from the Superman movie. I just didn't expect this. This was kind of a little bit of the let. Now, speaking of the Superman movie, those were my favorite parts. I will say this, that if there was one part of this movie that was a saving grace and I really, really enjoyed, not only was it the entire story of the death of Krypton, I thought that was handled extremely well, in my opinion. Argo City or whatever getting shot off and what happens afterwards, and the ground becomes kryptonite and basically kills everybody and they have to send Kara off. In a movie, Chad, where your son said everything was sad, that was actually supposed to be the sad part. That was supposed to be the bittersweet part. That was supposed to be the part where you were supposed to feel and understand what Kara's been through. And so I thought they handled that really well. But in addition to that, everything with David Cornsweet.
Yeah. Why am I talking louder?
Yeah.
But back to that Krypton and the city of Argon, and they doubled down on Jor-El basically sending Superman off to be Lothario of space and conquer a planet. There was none
that's
of that.
sweet
Oh,
boy.
maybe Lex Luthor garbled this on purpose. No, they doubled down on he was sent off to become the conqueror of Earth.
And it's so
Yeah.
ironic that Superman turns out the way he does. And Kara, who had parents that seemingly were, more decent, and she's the one that ends up damaged.
And that's where I think they waited for like the third act to show a lot of her backstory. And that was one of the things that I felt let the movie down, was that they didn't go into why she is so damaged nearly enough. They just was like, oh, she's just a loser, she's just not falling into the mold, running away from being a superhero cliche. And they had all this stuff they could have used from the book that was much more powerful. And I don't like to throw people under the bus, but I do think that with a first-time writer, it was probably a lot of this felt a bit like written by committee. Like, oh, we need another fight scene. Oh, we need another. How are we going to depower her yet again? Well, we'll have her shot with kryptonite arrows. It just felt like at times she was writing to the mandates of the overall plot, as opposed to actually putting together a story that resonated. And I think that's probably why you're seeing it not do so well in the theaters, because it is a bit muddled and it's dark.
Right.
I mean, it's just you can't see it. Imagine seeing it at a drive-in. It's just going to be a screen of dark stuff. You want nothing. There'll be nothing there.
Just grimy.
It's grimy, dark. I mean, turn some lights on. There's a reason why when you shot in film, you had to use those giant Klieg lights, because you had to light things. I'm sorry. Who's the cinematographer? Rob Hardy? You are not Stanley Kubrick. Get over yourself and turn up the ISO.
It is a shame, though, just because we all enjoyed the source material so much. And we thought the source material was such a complete package. And then you have this where instead of exploiting all the wonderful things that are in the source material, you get Mad Max cliches. You get Superman cliches like, oh, but she shoots red lasers out of her eyes. Yeah, okay. Nobody cares about that. You know what I mean? Like the comic makes you care about Supergirl, as opposed to this that just plays, an inch deep and a mile wide and doesn't ever really doesn't connect the way that it's supposed to.
All right. Well, one thing that we hope that you connect with is our ratings of Supergirl 2026. We've got a 1 out of 4 scale coming from J.A. Scott. We'll also get some final thoughts on what we thought of this movie. But J.A., what do we got this week?
Here's another thing. If you knew any of the backstory of this movie, they went through like 3 or 4 different composers. So by the end, I don't think they had a lot of original music. So there was so many needle drops of pop songs, because it's easier, I guess, to just get the rights to some of these songs than it is to pay somebody to put together some proper operatic score type music. So we're going to go with needle drops, 1 out of 4, because there were so many in this. I can't imagine the budget for their...
I like the slowed down version of Jimmy Eat World's The Middle. I enjoyed that. I was like, oh, I'm going to go first. I hope that folks that listen to The Last Comic Shop know that I'm not one of these people that jumps on bandwagons. I'm not one of these people that is posting pictures of Milly Alcock and saying, oh, look at how the other Supergirls look something else. Long story short, there's a lot of unnecessarily negative press around this movie circulating out of there. I'm not one of those guys, right? I went to this movie. I was really hoping that it was going to be really good. I hope it was going to be a good follow-up to the Superman movie. I did enjoy the source material. But at the end of the day, it wasn't because of Milly Alcock. I thought she was fine. I think she's going to be fine in movies that give her more stuff to do and better scripts to work with. I think she's perfectly great for this role in future DC movies, and hopefully, a sequel or a Justice League movie or whatever it happens to be. But in this movie, she was let down by a lot of things, by what J.A. said with the cinematography and everything just looking gross, unclean, Mad Maxy, but in a bad way. This is a 2. This is a 2 needle drops movie. It's okay. It's an average movie. And I know that's the general feeling that's been going around, that it's mid. You call it as you see it. And for the first time ever, I'm in that camp with everybody else in the universe where they basically say the book was better. Oh, you went to see the movie adaptation of the book? Did you read the book? The book's better. And in this case, the book is better. The book is miles better, just because of the beautiful art, just because of the fact that, like, again, on the planet where Supergirl gets depowered, Ruthie doesn't leave her. I thought that was terrible. Like, I was like, what the heck's going on here? Like, that was one of their big bonding moments, was on the planet where they're like Ruthie basically has to defend Supergirl for, like, I don't know, what, 9 out of those 10 hours. And then at the last moment, like, Ruthie's going to fall prey to that one last creature, and Supergirl musters up the strength to give her one last save to get them through the hour. That was their opportunity to bond. And then maybe that's the other thing. Like, I didn't really think that they had an opportunity to bond in this movie. But I won't lie, I liked Jason Momoa as Lobo. When he showed up, even though he was superfluous, I was like, this is kind of cool to see him. And you're seeing the Bastiches and stuff like that. It was fine. But it's a 2. It is mid. I hope that there are better movies for Milly Alcock to work with in future.
So I'm going to go a little bit higher, because for as critical as I was of this particular movie in our conversation, I enjoyed it. But I do think it's something that if I hadn't had the comic book supplement, if I hadn't read the comic book first to actually care about a lot of these things, I don't know that I would have. So as a standalone, I don't think the movie is anywhere near as good as it could have been. With the proper supplementation, I think it's fine. I did like a lot of the pieces. I enjoyed Ruthie. I feel like they could have done more with Ruthie. I thought Milly Alcock did put in a fantastic performance. Lobo was fun. It was just the sum of the parts didn't match what it came from. But I'm going to give it a 2.75. I don't think it was a bad movie. I enjoyed it, but I think that's because I had the background of the far superior comic book experience. And the music, it's like Andy alluded to, it's James Gunn light, where I would have wanted it to be more James Gunnish, if anything. And that's something that does worry me a little bit about the direction of the DCU. If you're going to crop somebody's style, you want to make sure you're doing it the right way. And I hope other directors don't try to be dollar store James Gunn, and that they're able to be their own thing. That's not going to work if it's all just knockoffs of knockoffs of knockoffs.
Yeah, I think you nailed it when it comes to, if you don't read the source material, the movie's not as good. And that's the problem, because most of the world is going to this movie without having read the source material. The bar is therefore higher for them. And I think because of the source material, there are some baked-in issues where a good screenwriter maybe could have fixed some of that stuff. I don't think Krem of the Yellow Hills is necessarily a really good bad guy for a movie, because he's just I mean, in the movie he's got no motivation other than he's just bad. He's evil incarnate. Yeah. He doesn't lend anything to the story. There's no journey for him. It's just, I'm the bad guy, and I'm bad. I'm killing dogs and stealing brides, and, you know, all the most horrible things in the world. I do them, so that's why I'm a bad guy. Nothing. He was the most uninteresting bad guy since maybe, I don't know, Malekith in Thor the Dark World, another useless bad guy. That, I thought, was problematic. Superhero films in general haven't been getting a very good public these past couple of years. There's the whole talk about, you know, people have fatigue, superhero fatigue, and superheroine movies that are led by women, have an even higher bar to cross. You look at all the ones that have failed over the years versus the very, very small group of superheroine movies that have done well. I think there's maybe 2. You've got the first Wonder Woman movie, and you've got Captain Marvel, sandwiched between the 2 Infinity War Avengers movies and Black Panther. So you could say that they were kind of riding those coattails a bit. So all of that, I just felt you got an incredible performance from Milly Alcock, and it was wasted on this script. It was wasted on the plot, and they didn't lean enough into the original source material. And at the same time, it just came out to, a mid-tier movie that I can see why people are not so interested of going to see, because you can walk out and say it's a perfectly acceptable movie, but it's perfectly acceptable to wait and watch it on Netflix or HBO Max or wherever it'll be. And maybe you can then turn your TV brightness settings up and actually see what the heck is going on. Really?
Yeah, that's the that's the most amazing part of all this, right? We saw another movie just a couple weeks ago, right? Masters of the Universe. That reminded me of Bilquis Everly book, right? It was lush, it was technicolor, it was dreamlike, it was beautiful. There were, fantastical creatures and monsters and vistas and all this other jazz. And then you get this and you're just like, again, maybe it was I was expecting the same aesthetic as the book. Maybe I was expecting the book. Maybe I wanted the book and I didn't get the book, and that sucks.
It's just a shame, though, because I don't think people are fading the superhero genre. But these movies have not been great. Like, I genuinely enjoyed the Superman movie. But, like, as a big-time comic fan, I'm very hard-pressed to think of many superhero movies post-Endgame that weren't, the occasional Spider-Man or that Superman movie that were genuinely good movies in my mind. And so, like, I understand why audiences are coming out. Make a better movie. Understand the movie is the thing, and you got to make a better movie unto itself.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's unto itself is The Last Comic Shop. We hope that you rate, review, and subscribe over at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, especially with what's happening next week. That's right. We've been teasing it for weeks, but here it comes, folks. Next week, our 300th episode of The Last Comic Shop. We've been around for 300 episodes. We've got an all-star cast coming back to review Batman The Dark Knight Returns. It is the 40th anniversary of that particular book. Can't wait. We've got some really special things going on. Can't spoil that, so you're just going to have to listen, but we've got something that should be really great for all of our listeners to celebrate 300 episodes, guys, of us reviewing these comic books together. So
it's 300 straight weeks.
That's right. We never took a week off. Damn it. Rate, review, and subscribe. Listen to some of those other 299 shows to get you all pumped for next week. They're all available on Evergreen over at our website, www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com.
We did have recommendations in the middle of the show, but we don't remember what they are at this point. So go back and listen to that again, and then support your local comic shop by buying some of that stuff. And then once you've bought that stuff, go to our website, www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, where you can find links to the socials, links to all the fun old episodes that we have, and links to the merch store where you can buy more stuff. What stuff are we selling them this week, Dave?
Coffee mugs and tote bags and hats and t-shirts. What we need to do is we need to get some of those cool colored glasses on. Milly Alcock had some sweet swag. Every time she was always wearing sunglasses, probably because she had a hangover. But anyways, we need to get some Last Comic Shop sunglasses, and to go with our Last Comic Shop summer t-shirt. That's right. Get the one with the palm trees and the sun. Get it in pink or blue or yellow or turquoise or lime green, and go outside and enjoy the summertime.
Keep yourself hydrated, kids, especially if you're wearing one of those like dirty trench coats. That was all 90s. Everyone was all upset about the trench coat look that Milly Alcock was doing. I was just like, nah, she's like the Punisher in the 90s, or Gambit, or any other person that just put a visor on her. She was fine. Give her one of those like those
head sock. She just needed a head sock.
That's right. Shin guards. She would have looked right out of a Rob Liefeld book. It would have. And if you have Rob Liefeld books that you want to protect, Chad, what's the best way to protect? I mean, you have a bunch of them. Don't you use a particular company to do that?
Sure. It's bcwsupplies.com. That's right. Go to BCW Supplies for bags, boards, little plastic comic book holder displayer thingers, things for your sports cards, and all sorts of other memorabilia. But if you use our promo code LCSPOD at checkout, you can save 10% on your order and help out the show. So we've been doing these 299 episodes, and any and all support is appreciated. And so go to BCW Supplies and use our promo code LCSPOD at checkout.
There you go. And until next week, when we hope that you are around for our 300th episode, I was the host of Most Danny Larson. I was joined by Jay Scott and Chad Smith, and we hope that you stay safe, stay crypto-ing. That was another thing I was really sad about. I took my daughter to this movie, and she was really hoping for a lot more crypto. And I was just like, boy, that would have brought some joy, because nothing's cuter than a super pooch. But he spent most of his time just sad, laying in a bed somewhere.
Everybody was sad.
Comic Shop Podcast was a 2026 Black Angus production.